Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the super final of the TCEC season 28 that you can follow now on the official and beautiful TCEC website. We have, of course, the most spectacular super final that's possible. It's, of course, the grand match between the most powerful chess engines between Stockfish and the Leela LCZero. But what's also worth to mention in this TCEC season 28, we had also a new great chess engine that finished in the third place in the Premier Division of this new TCEC season. It was the top engine Integral. Integral, in one particular moment of this event, was even in the lead, and what's very important to say, Integral also won a pair against Stockfish. What I mean about the pair, you know that the engines are playing different openings, but once with the white pieces, once then with the black pieces, and in this one pairing, Integral was even better than the most powerful chess engine in the world, than Stockfish 17, which was very crazy. In the next couple of seasons, I think we can expect Integral even to be better, so it will probably not be always this super final, this grand final between Stockfish and the Leela LCZero, but so far still these are the two most powerful chess engines in the world. So in the super final, the result after 24 rounds as I'm recording this video is +5 for Stockfish. Stockfish is dominating over Leela in any openings. One pairing actually Leela won, so once Leela LCZero drew a game in a seemingly worse position, but then in the reverse game Leela LCZero managed to win the game with the white pieces, so it was the only time where Leela was better in one particular opening that was prearranged by the organizer. And I sorted out now an amazing game from the super final between Stockfish and Leela LCZero in the so-called Blumenfeld Countergambit. The Blumenfeld Countergambit is a gambit that I think someone should try to avoid when you're playing maybe with the black pieces, but it's a tricky opening because the idea by black is to gain really powerful central control with the pawns. We have covered a couple of games in this opening, but also with ideas from white and from black perspective. But let's see now how Stockfish is handling this Blumenfeld counter gambit with the white pieces. And also let's repeat, Stockfish in the reverse game managed to play a draw in this, I would say, the risky opening from black's perspective. So with white here, the fish open with move d4, knight to f6 by Leela, c4, we have e6, knight to f3, and after move c5, the game started in sort of a Benonish style, but then after move d5 and b5, we have reached now finally the position of the Blumenfeld counter gambit. The idea is clear. After d takes e6 and f takes e6, which is still my recommendation also to play in c takes b5, the idea is, you see now, black gave up a pawn in the early stage of the opening, but d5 is going to happen. d5 is the main progressive plan. Then when maybe even the e5 pawn comes, then black is storming with three very unpleasant pawns in the center of the board, and white has to find some kind of a counter play. Of course, white has an extra pawn. If the game reaches the fully endgame stage, then obviously white is winning, but black is so far relying on this enormous pressure here in the center of the board. So here there are several options. So you can play bishop to b7 from black's perspective, a6, d5 is an option here. The move that was still prearranged by the organizer was the move bishop to b7. We have now bishop to g5, and now again several options. You can play, of course, d5 here. It is a line that has been played many times in chess history, but now I think you can even go with e4, because after something like d takes e4, you can trade it off here. Then you go for the knight on e5 or something, or even knight to d2, where you can go for the pawn, knight to c3, bishop takes f6, and you get the pawn back, and then you continue the game here with this 3 versus 1 situation on the queen side. So that's why for bishop to g5, queen to a5, Stockfish now played knight to c3, and now comes d5. That was now the last prearranged move by the organizer. From this point on, the engines are calculating the position for themselves. And what's also worth to mention, I see one game in the database in this particular position. The game was Gerald Hartneck against Ivan Sokolov. The game ended in a draw, and the game has been played in 1994. Let's see different options instead of this move d5. You could maybe try knight to e4. Seems tempting also to maybe put more pressure against this knight on c3. e3. Let's practice, of course, a little bit opening theory here. Knight to e4 can be met with an easy bishop to d2, and even if knight takes d2 happens, still have knight from f to d2. If, for instance, black continues now with the move d5, then you go again for the e4 goal. The main goal, I think, from white's perspective, is somehow to stop this pawn chain that's rolling in the center of the board, or to split the pawn chain. For instance, if d takes e4 happens, then we'll eventually get our pawn back after a couple more moves. Knight to c4, queen to e2, and similar stuff. Knight takes e4 then later. But the main goal is somehow to split the pawns so they're not rolling here in the center of the board. Even if in this line, for instance, after e4, d4 happens, then you have this in-between check, and then you can go for queen to e5 and similar stuff. Knight to c4 instead of this move is also possible. So again, I would say completely winning position here for white. So that's the issue about this move, knight to e4. It doesn't bring you so much. It's not really such a big deal here for white to handle. So that's why d5 immediately here by Leela LCZero. Now Stockfish continues with e3. e4 now is not possible, but with the idea to play e4 later. So this move e4 has to be prepared with the white pieces, again with the same plan, to split the pawns or maybe to stop them, that the pawns again are not so mobile in the center of the board for black. So now comes knight from b to d7, bishop to e2, normal development, and now bishop to d6. Even now knight to e4, if you ask yourself the question if this move is now working, it's actually again not a big deal here for white. White can simply go castling, and if knight to c3 happens, b takes c3, queen takes c3, rook to c1, just gives here white active play. And then again e4, again this idea to split the pawns. If, for instance, d takes e4 happens, then there is this beautiful queen to b3 counter play with the idea to play queen to e6. So even if you try, I don't know, bishop to d5, we just play bishop to c4. If you grab the pawn, if you grab the piece, pardon me, then we simply pick up this one, and the position is simply collapsing here for black. Queen to d5, you have to play, I don't know, king to f7 here. It's simply not working. Queen to d5, and you can resign after a couple of moves here. It's even a forced checkmate in 5. So I'm showing you this just to prove the point here that this whole concept with knight to e4 is simply not working for black. Black has to be fast in development because black still has this king in the center, so that's why Leela tried bishop to d6. Now comes, I think, a very important moment of this opening, bishop to h4. This move, bishop to h4, does several things. Great move, I would say, here by Stockfish. First of all, bishop to h4 is a preparation to later play bishop to g3 to control further the e5 square. Also, what it's doing is it's preparing the potential knight to g5 move. It clears actually the square for this, I would say, not so well placed knight, because this knight will be eventually maybe even kicked away with potential ideas like e5 and e4. For instance, after bishop to h4, if, for instance, e5 happens immediately by black, then white can play simple castling, and now we see the idea about this move bishop to h4. For instance, if d4 happens, then you have great counterplay with knight to g5. You can pick up the knight, but then also see the bishop is hanging. Even if you try kingside castling, then bishop to c4 clears now here this diagonal for the light square. Bishop, king to h8, then there are some ideas, knight to f7 and similar stuff. Now we can even retreat with their knight, but the main goal is to activate this knight that was, as we said, not so well placed on f3. Now on g5, it's very a powerful piece. So bishop to h4, I would say the first very great move here by Stockfish 17. So castling now by Leela LCZero, and now castling also by the fish. Knight to e5, now comes counterplay with knight to g5. Now we see this same concept but in a different position. Here we have rook to e8, you have to protect your pawn, and now bishop to g3. The bishop is now well placed. It's competing against this very unpleasant bishop on d6, because, as we mentioned, black's goal is somehow to maybe clear this e-file and then start to push the pawns. If 3 pawns are storming towards you, I can guarantee you, you'll not have a fun game here with the white pieces. So what should you do now here again from black's perspective? If you try something like h6, seems again tempting to finally kick away this knight, then there is this idea, knight to e4. Great counterplay again here for white. The knight takes e4, d takes e4, and then when this bishop is lost on the d file, the knight is hanging. Here we still have this 3 versus 2 situation on the queen side. We have occupied already the open file. We have the bishop pair in an open battle. I think we can agree this is game over simply here for black. After bishop to g3, that's why Leela tried to keep it calm and connect now finally the queen to the bishop, because there were threats. We saw it with this move, knight to e4 and clearing the d file. We have now rook to c1, another great move here by the fish. If something clears on the c file, then the queen can be in danger. That's why queen to e7 by LCZero, getting out of this potential mess. But you see, in the last couple of moves, Stockfish really activated many pieces now, really pushed away a little bit Leela to the back ranks. Now the pieces are not so active, I would say, here by black. Stockfish on the other hand has great control with the pieces and still has this extra pawn. This is something that we should not forget. Leela gave it up just in order to control somehow the center. We have now e4, and that's the move that we have said that we have been waiting for. What should you do? If you try d4 to just prove your point with your pawns in the center, then there is counterplay with f4. This wasn't playing the game, but obviously this is one line that maybe some of us would have tried. If you try knight to f7, takes, then e5, you take, still this bishop is hanging, then we pick up the knight, and in this sequence, I think the game is simplified. The game is not so dangerous anymore. We still have this extra pawn with the white pieces. We're controlling, I think, many squares here. In the later stage of the game, we can also go for this one. We can simplify the game further with bishop to f3, rook to f3, rook to d3, and similar stuff. But this is something that I think black doesn't want to get, a fully simplification. Black wants to complicate things. Black wants to prove his point here with this powerful central control with the pawn. But e4, as we mentioned, that's the move that we have prepared from the beginning, just to split the pawns or somehow stop the pawn chain here in the center of the board. Now comes c4 here by Leela. Stockfish continues now with rook to e1. Now moves like h6 are not so dangerous anymore, because if again many pieces are traded off, still we have a great control of the e4 square. So that's why rook to e1 actually is sort of a connection between the rook and this pawn on e4. We have now bishop to c5, and now the real fun starts. So Leela gives up now the protection of the knight on e5 just to somehow push the pawn to d4. You see, this is the main plan by black, but it's risky now. It was a preparation. It was a game where both engines tried to first of all find good scores for the pieces, but now we have a tactical festival here by these two top engines. After move bishop to c5, Stockfish says, show me what you got, and picks up now the knight on e5. Leela plays knight to g4, counterplay against the square on f2. Stockfish picks up now the knight, but now bishop takes f2, king to h1. We have queen to g5, and you see still many pieces by white are hanging. Also the rook on e1 is hanging. Stockfish continues now with rook to e2. The only good move, I would say, here for white. Every other move is not so good, I would say, because of this really great now finally coordination of black's pieces. If you try queen to e5 now, from black's perspective, this is not good. This wasn't playing the game by Leela, but I wanted to show this risky idea. Then after e takes d5, you see the e file gets cleared. You have to step back. This pawn is lost, and I think white can easily defend his position. Still, of course, black has the bishop pair, but also then the pawn on e6 is hanging. The bishop is now a little bit misplaced. This knight will come eventually into the game. I think we can agree again. Completely winning position for white. So that's why for rook to e2, Leela tried finally d4, but now Stockfish escapes. The issue is now, if you try something like d takes c3, then bishop to f8 is, I think, easy play for white. Even if you try something like this, still this rook is controlling the second rank. Not it's controlling the second rank. Now there's also the protection of the queen against the bishop, so nothing gained here for for black. So after bishop to d6, that's why rook to f7 by LCZero, and now bishop to f3. Stockfish escapes. If you try d takes c3 now, then rook to f2 is obviously winning. That was Stockfish idea to disconnect the defense of the rook for the bishop here. After bishop to f3, we have bishop to e3, rook takes e3. Stockfish doesn't want to tolerate anymore this very unpleasant bishop all over the board. Gave up now the rook for the exchange, but after queen to e3, Stockfish had this plan: bishop to c5, and you see now the pawn on d4 is hanging again with the same plan that we have discussed in the beginning of the video, just somehow to stop this pawn change, to stop this pawn rolling. The issue is here that you cannot play e5. E5 seems tempting, that you're maybe connecting again all of these pawns, but then knight to d5, bishop to d5, and e takes d5, you try maybe e4, but then bishop to d4 is solving every tactical problem here for white. I would say again, completely winning position here for Stockfish. So that's why after bishop to c5, Leela didn't play e5, played now rook to d8, tried to keep this pawn protected, but now knight to b1. Of course, Stockfish doesn't want to lose further minor pieces. We have now bishop to e4, knight to d2, bishop takes f3, and now knight to f3. And okay, let's stop and evaluate this position a little bit. For knight to f3, still I would say it's a complicated game to play. In human level, I can guarantee you many of us would mess up this game with the white pieces. Although my Stockfish engine at home evaluates this position as 1.2 in white's favor. But it's a complicated game because still black will eventually find a plan with the move e5. Will somehow connect again two pass pawns in the center of the board, which is very unpleasant to handle. So how to prevent this? After knight to f3, you could maybe try here to move e5 with the black pieces, but again it's not working because of rook to c4. Then if you try e4, then this pawn is again hanging, and if you try this one, then again we'll simply go for the trade of pieces, bishop to d4, and the queen is hanging, and then we can step back with the knight. Now black has lost many pawns in the center of the board. Obviously this is not working. White is dominating here with this 3 versus 1 situation on the queen side. So after knight to f3, that's why g5. A great move again here by Leela. Leela wants to deflect somehow this knight from the attack of the d4 pawn. Stockfish continues now with rook to c4. We have now the move e5 and now h3, not allowing g4 here by black. Leela continues with g4 anyway. H takes g4, and now a check. Stockfish covers. We have queen to h4, but now rook to c1. We have a queen to g5, bishop to b4. We have now the move e4, and now rook to c5. Great counterplay again by the fish, forcing now trades of rooks here. After rook to d8, we have rook takes d8, queen to d8, but now bishop to c5, d3, and now bishop to e3. And that's how you battle against pawn storms. You try to, of course, stop them. You're not allowing these pawns to roll, and that was, I think, mission accomplished here by Stockfish. Although these pawns are still unpleasant to handle, but with the queen activity and with this centralized bishop now, Stockfish is stopping these pawns. And we have to also mention now LCZero is simply vulnerable here in front of the king. This knight, although misplaced a little bit, but I think it will find a way into the game in the later stage of this end game. You have to prepare it, of course, but I don't see any active idea anymore here for LCZero. Stockfish is now controlling the whole board. Great defensive play, I would say, by Stockfish, not allowing, as I said, simply the pawns to roll. And now we're trying to activate the pieces further. Queen to c7, queen to e1, queen to c2. Leela goes for the pawns on the queen side, but Stockfish simply relies now on the piece activity. Stockfish says go for the pawns, but look at this now. My knight is coming into the game, and what should you do? Even if you go for the pawns further, it's not so good. Queen to f2, you're trying to maybe get the queen into the game. There are also this kind of threats. The main goal by Stockfish was actually to somehow get this knight into the game, and I would say again, mission accomplished. Now all of these pieces are really playing in great harmony. Leela tried here e3 just to complicate things further, but knight to e3 doesn't bring anything here. Leela tried to attack this pawn, Stockfish protects it. Leela tries again to activate the rook. Now Stockfish plays g6, simply pushes the pawn further. H takes g6, queen to g6. Even if you cover, here we can deliver a check, and then with some ideas of bishop to c3, again I would say completely winning position here for Stockfish. So that's why for queen to g6 we have king to f8, now a3, we have now a5. Stockfish picked up now the pawn on d3. Leela is trying to battle, but now look at this, these pieces are simply now too much to handle. Look at this, this knight is coming into the game, the bishop will come into the game. Here we have queen to h8 check, and now after a couple more moves it was really game over. New check, we have now new check. Stockfish doesn't even care to pick up the rook, first of all including all of the pieces into the attack. Again a new check, and now finally when the king came here on this diagonal, we have a discovered attack against the queen. Now Stockfish activate the queen, and after knight to d7 it was a beautiful checkmate with the bishops, knights and queens activity. So amazing play here by Stockfish against the Blumenfeld Countergambit. I think really instructive play here by Stockfish against this really unpleasant opening. We have seen very important elements: how to stop pawn chains, how to disconnect the pawns, how to activate these pieces. I would say this move, bishop to h4, was a great theoretical move where Stockfish in the beginning liberated the square for the knight, and then eventually the knight was very active, controlled many squares on black side of the board. A very powerful play here by Stockfish, and as I said in the beginning of the video, Stockfish is now in the lead in the TCEC season 28 super final against Leela LCZero with a +5 result so far. So still the engines will play 76 more games, so anything can change, but I think we can agree already that Stockfish will probably will be the winner of a new TCEC competition. +5 in this early stage of the super final is very powerful play for Stockfish. Although Leela LCZero, as we also mentioned, one pairing, but it's simply not enough. Stockfish is dominating in many openings, in many pre-arranged positions by the organizers. So okay, we'll of course follow this beautiful TCEC season 28 super final. Congratulations again also to the developers of the integral chess engine, which proved itself as the third force in the AI chess world. And what to say in the end, thanks for watching, and chess is the best, of course.